On a Friday afternoon, a Dhaka city bus is an exercise in survival. You pack yourself into a metal box with 50 strangers, surrounded by a suffocating gridlock of traffic. The only way to endure it is isolation. You stare at your phone, you look out the window, you mind your own business. Until the guy sitting across from you violently hits the floor. A passenger in a red shirt suddenly twists and drops face first. What happens next is deeply unsettling. For 30 agonizing seconds, nobody moves. The bus is packed shoulder to shoulder, yet the man is surrounded by a vacuum of pure silence. Everyone is terrified of getting involved in a stranger's mess. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Another passenger and I broke the standoff. We reached down and hauled the guy up by his shoulders. He was in bad shape. His head felt like it was burning up. We tried pouring bottled water over his face, but he choked and spat it back out. Then, blood started pooling from his nose. When you see someone bleeding from the face, your instinct is to play the hero. But stepping out of your protective bubble of apathy is often the exact moment you walk blindly into a trap. We needed to find his family, fast. I grabbed his phone from his pocket, pressed his limp thumb against the sensor, and opened his contacts. This visualization of his phone's contact list shows the strange network we found. I hit dial on a number saved as Baba Personal. I explained that his son was unconscious on a bus and asked him to come quickly. The voice on the other end paused and hangs up. The phone went completely dead. Checking his call history reveals another bizarre pattern. There are over a dozen missed calls to someone named Mim New Job and another contact labeled as his wife. But when you look closely at the screen, both of those contacts share the exact same phone number. They both end in the digits 32. We called that number anyway. Someone picked up, muttered a quick hello, and immediately cut the line. Dead again. The active abandonment by his own support network signals a calculated mystery. People do not usually ignore their dying relatives unless the crisis itself is a staged event. Back on the bus, a young woman in a pink hijab suddenly rushed up from the back seats. She sat right next to the bleeding man, grabbed his hand, and started acting like a concerned medical professional. I stepped back to let her work. But instead of checking his pulse or looking at his airway, she leaned down, pressed her face against his, and started whispering secrets into the dying man's ear. We started this chaotic ride near Himayatpur, but forced the driver to fly straight to the Gobtully terminal to get this guy into a hospital. The bus slammed on the brakes. As we went to lift the patient, the girl in the pink hijab and an older woman in a burqa tried to quickly slip out the exit. But the driver and conductor realized something was wrong. They made the doors slam shut, physically blocking the women from escaping. In the middle of the shouting match, a passenger from the back row spoke up. He pointed at the sick man and the two women, stating that all three of them had boarded the bus together as a group. This revelation exposed the entire incident as a coordinated operation, stripped of its accidental facade. Cornered, the older woman started stammering out an absurd excuse. She claimed she didn't recognize the dying man at first, but suddenly realized he was her divorced niece's new husband. They had sat in complete silence for 40 minutes, watching him bleed. The sick man groaned, weakly shook his head, and mumbled that he had absolutely no idea who these women were. The cover story evaporated instantly. This schematic maps out the mechanics of the trap. You have the bait, the sick man at the front of the bus. You have the handlers, the women positioned at the back. The goal is to create chaos, manipulate your empathy, and draw the mark out of their seat. I was the mark. Distracted with the bait, I left my MacBook unguarded on my seat, a perfect window for invisible theft. The physical theft is actually the lesser danger. If things had escalated differently, those women could have easily pointed at us and screamed that we were thieves, or that we were harassing them. In a crowded city like Dhaka, a mob doesn't ask questions, they just attack. This is the hidden cost of living in a modern metropolis. Urban predators have learned to weaponize human empathy, and when compassion becomes a liability, the only logical way for citizens to survive is to turn off their feelings, ignore the suffering around them, and